My name is Greg Kaiser, and this is Think Supersystemic. We explore the science, art, and economy of interconnectedness. Today, our guest is Dr. Deniz Salali. She is a British Academy Research Fellow and lecturer in Evolutionary Anthropology and Medicine at University College London. Dr. Salali focuses on social learning and hunter-gatherers and has spent time living with tribes in order to do her research. Today, she'll be sharing some very powerful ideas about how the findings of her research can be applied to modern problems, such as how we have dealt with this current pandemic and how we use machine learning to develop artificial intelligence. Hi, Deniz. Welcome to Think Supersystemic.
Hi, Greg.
Thanks so much for joining the show. So to get started, I would love to just hear a little bit about your work studying hunter-gatherers and kind of the trajectory of your work over the past years and how you got to the point that you are today.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm quite excited to be talking about my work. So I have been studying hunter-gatherers in Congo since 2013. Perhaps before I start talking about what I've been studying, I should tell you a bit about why I decided to study hunter-gatherers.
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah, so I have been intrigued by this question of what makes us human since I was a teenager. And I was fascinated by the works of Darwin, his voyage on Beagle, and other researchers like Leakey and Diane Fossey. So I always wanted to do field work in Africa, but I thought it was just a dream. And with a bit of luck and determination, then I got to do a master's degree in evolutionary biology. And then after my master's, so I realized that I'm more interested in human behavior and human evolution. Because before that, I worked a bit on projects on animal behavior as well. And after my master's, I decided to pursue a PhD degree in evolutionary anthropology. And that's how I got to study hunter-gatherers.
Interesting.
So why hunter-gatherers? If you ask why, because if you're interested in questions like what makes us human, then you need to think about humans in our evolutionary history. You need to consider the whole evolutionary history of modern humans. And when you look at our evolutionary history, we lived by hunting and gathering for the majority of our time on Earth. So studying current-day hunter-gatherers may inform us a bit on the kind of social environments and ecological environments that we have evolved in. So that's why I decided to study biota.
Yeah, just to speak to that, can you, how long, so hunter-gatherer lifestyles, how long were humans doing things kind of in the ways that hunter-gatherers do them before we kind of transformed to agriculture and so forth? What was the period of time that we're talking about? I'm just curious how quickly we changed to this crazy new lifestyle that we have now.
Yeah, it's actually quite quick when you consider. So say modern humans have evolved 250, 300,000 years ago, and only the last 12,000 of years we started doing agriculture. So when you do the calculation, then it means that around 95% of our time as modern humans on Earth, we lived by hunting and gathering. So the agricultural bit is only like about 5%, I guess.
And would you say, just before we get into the next area, would you say that has kind of a profound effect on our psychology? Like, are we still hunter-gatherers? I hear people at times argue that, you should do this or you should do this because we still have the bodies and minds of hunter-gatherers. Is there some truth to that?
Well, that's a question that is quite debated at the moment. Well, we also are quite flexible people. So it's not like there was a certain kind of environment that we have evolved in, and that's the only environment that determines our psychology. First of all, hunter-gatherers, like prehistorical hunter-gatherers, also had a very diverse environment, lived in many diverse environments. There is not one certain environment. So instead of thinking about one certain ecological environment, we should consider how different ecologies may have influence on our behaviors, because these are diverse ecologies. Some hunter-gatherers lived in Arctic environments, some others lived in, for instance, tropical rainforests, some others lived in the savanna. So depending on these ecologies, there are different selection pressures which may have affected our psychology. So it is, we have to be careful about making generalizations.
Okay. And you focus specifically on learning capacities and so forth of hunter-gatherers, is that correct?
Yes, so one of the main questions I ask in my research is how we have evolved culture, because human culture is quite fascinating. It's very complex, diverse, and it's cumulative. So if you think about technology, we first invented writing, then press, then computers, and now we have artificial intelligence. So I'm interested in how we came to this place. And one aspect of human behavior that contributes to this is how we acquire information and how we learn things and how we transmit this information. So that's what I've been studying in hunter-gatherers, how hunter-gatherer children acquire knowledge and skills.
Interesting.
In the absence of formal education.
And yeah, do you want to talk about your findings a little bit?
Yeah, so we have evolved. It's not like hunter-gatherer children have different learning mechanisms. We all have the same learning mechanisms, but some of them we use in Western growing up, we use some more and some less. For example, one of the things I was quite surprised and a little bit worried when I first started living with hunter-gatherers was that I saw hunter-gatherer toddlers as young as 1 year old everywhere, playing with machetes, like licking knives. And then I realized that this is actually how they learn. So what we see in hunter-gatherer children is that when they're toddlers, they start acquiring skills and knowledge by just observing other people and copying what others are doing around them. So I don't know if you have time, I can share my screen to show.
Yeah, sure, please do. I think you should be able to share.
Okay, let me see if I share this. Can you see some photos now?
Yep, I see a photo coming up. It's a little bit slow, so give it a second. I'm seeing it's kind of, okay, there it is. So I see the first picture.
Okay, so this the first picture is, I put it just to show you how a hunter-gatherer camp looks like. So people traditionally live in 30, 40 people together in one camp, and they're quite mobile.
Okay.
So if I go to hunter-gatherer children, so here, for example, you see a toddler girl. She was 1 years old when I, at that time, and she is with her aunt, who is at that time was 6 year old, around 6 years, and you can see how she's learning to use machete by just copying her aunt, who is already efficient at using machetes.
Okay.
And the same toddler playing with the wild meat and the knife. I was quite scared when I was filming this.
Interesting.
But it's to my surprise, I haven't seen any children hurting themselves in this way. So that actually shows us that human children are, and also adults, we're really good at imitating what others are doing. So that's how hunter-gatherer children start learning skills. But then once they're a bit older, so once they wean, then most learning happens in playgroups. There are mixed age. These playgroups are composed of mixed age children, and so they learn from older children, and also they learn by mostly practicing.
Okay. And so would you say would you say that it differs greatly from the way that we currently educate children? Like, what are the big differences? And I guess, are you learning something that if you could reform education in the, the quote unquote modern world, how would you push it? Like, in what direction would you push it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one difference is that the reliance on teaching. So although in hunter-gatherers as well, we see that sometimes there are verbal instructions. That is how sometimes children are taught, but this is quite rare. So even if there's teaching, that's usually based on negative or positive feedback. So they usually allow the children first to explore themselves and practice themselves. And then depending on what the child is doing, how she or he is performing, then if it's necessary, then adults or older children may give some feedback. But in Western education, I think it's very heavily reliant on this kind of verbal instructions and not really letting children explore much. And I think that can be changed. Another thing is, of course, the social structure is quite different. We are not living in the kind of communities that these hunter-gatherer groups are living. So children have lots of opportunities to learn from, for example, older children, but in Western education, the education is more based on age groups. So perhaps some systems where different generations can come together and learn by, observing each other, then that may be, I think, an interesting and perhaps useful solution.
Interesting. Have you heard of the unschooling movement? So this movement where people are taking kids, not just homeschooling, but unschooling, where they're not giving them any schooling at all. And, in the alleged modern world, and letting them just kind of like follow the parents throughout the day and whatever they're doing and see how they learn that way. Have you looked at that at all? Because that sounds kind of,
Yeah, I've heard about this. I've been following on Facebook Peter Gray, and I think he's a psychologist and he's a great advocate of these kind of movements. I think I want to say that we still need to be careful, because I'm not saying that teaching is not important at all. So in our research, for example, we see that teaching in hunter-gatherers is used more for more abstract information. For example, social norms. So say they have this rule of sharing food in the community. The meat that is hunted needs to be shared, and there are specific sets of rules how to share meat properly. This kind of information, because it's more abstract than it's being taught, or like the feedback is given to children. And it's the same with some other information that in Western world is quite necessary now. For example, mathematics. You can't just learn mathematics by observing what other people are doing. So I think it really depends on also the domain of information. So for mechanical skills, I think it's more important that people, like children, learn through exploring and practicing themselves, but some other like more abstract information, then we do need teaching.
Yeah, you need people to walk you through like the abstractions and so forth. That makes sense. So I understand that you are also currently focused on the current crisis, the coronavirus, and the kind of the lockdowns and implications, so forth, that has for kind of our collective psychology. Can you talk a little bit about what you're looking at and what you're thinking about that whole situation?
So I have one study that I can talk about, but apart from that, like with respect to what I've been telling about how information is shared in humans, there are quite a lot of applications to the current situation as well. So one of them is that we have some biases in our social learning because these biases have been mostly useful throughout our evolution. For example, most humans tend to learn, tend to copy what others are doing in their community. And if you, for example, think of a hunter-gatherer child deciding on what plants she needs to eat, then rather than trying all the plants by herself and seeing which one is good, she's going to be better off seeing what others are eating and just copying that behavior. But these kind of social learning biases, we say in research, these kind of social learning biases may be even harmful in some other conditions. For example, in the current pandemic situation, there are still quite a lot of unknowns about the novel coronavirus. And this is actually a perfect playground for conspiracy beliefs and misinformation to flourish. And because we have these biases of copying what others are believing and doing in our community, then this misinformation can spread further. We also have biases that we tend to copy the people who we perceive as prestigious, because prestige has been most of the time linked to skill and knowledge. But if this kind of misinformation is coming from prestigious individuals, then it also increases the chances that more people kind of
like the president of the United States, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give names, but it's quite a good environment for misinformation to flourish, because there's so much unknown still. And another thing, I have been thinking with colleagues at UCL that there has been also quite a lot of contradictory advice on wearing face masks, for example. And different countries follow different rules. So when there is this kind of uncertainty, then you wouldn't expect people to start wearing face masks until a certain number of people start wearing them in their community. So it may take some time to see that kind of behavior, because it needs to be a kind of cultural norm in the community for it to take off.
So some people in the community might know, for example, that it's dangerous if they don't, and they'll start wearing it. So they're the brave ones that first start wearing it. And other people who haven't looked into it so much are kind of like, oh, I don't want to wear one. But then when they see maybe a smarter, prestigious individual doing it, they'll start wearing it. It spreads. Is that essentially? So it sounds like it's similar to what you're saying in hunter-gatherer cultures, like where that social aspect hasn't changed very much.
Yeah, because we are social species, so we do a lot of things based on, with regards to our social environment. Like reputation, for example, is very important for us.
Right. And I know we weren't really planning on talking about it, but I know you have some ideas about the way that hunter-gatherers learn and the way that we're doing machine learning for developing algorithms and artificial intelligence. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, well, I've been really interested by the latest research on artificial intelligence, and I've been reading a lot about this company DeepMind's blogs. And I realized that the kind of new algorithms that they're developing, for example, their latest publication on this general game that can play both Go, chess, and the other, I can't remember the name of the game.
Alpha Zero, is that the name of the? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the one that can play many different games, not only Go, but chess and other game as well. So they have been using quite a lot of unsupervised, what in machine learning is called unsupervised learning strategies. And I think this really helped them build a very flexible algorithm. And I think there are a lot of parallels between how hunter-gatherer children learn and the new way of machine learning strategies, because there is more space for exploration in both of them rather than giving kind of direct instructions, which I know from my readings that the first kind of artificial intelligence algorithms were more based on these kind of direct instructions. And that's why they were quite limited as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I was speaking with somebody who works in neuroscience and machine learning the other day, and he mentioned this problem of overfitting, that the algorithms become so smart at a specific area that they can no longer work outside of that area. And it sounds like what you're talking about is exactly what DeepMind and other companies are doing to kind of deal with that problem.
Yeah, that's true. I actually had a chat with a researcher in DeepMind, and I had some ideas about how we can perhaps apply human social learning to artificial intelligence, and perhaps maybe I will write about it someday. But basically, I think the future is in multi-agent systems, and I think these companies are already working on a lot on multi-agent systems. Because if you can build multi-agent systems, then you don't have this problem of one like set of algorithms specializing in a topic. If they can communicate somehow, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this is
more resembles human cultural evolution. Sorry.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, this has been super interesting. Thank you so much for joining the call. I think we could go on for hours and hours. I have other questions, but I think we'll try to keep it brief this time, and maybe we'll have another conversation in the future. But thanks for doing that work, and it's so intriguing and interesting, especially when you apply it to disciplines like machine learning and current social dynamics and so forth. So thanks again for being on the call.
Thank you. Yeah, I would be very happy to have a chat again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.